Okay, so the NFL draft, it's really something else, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. All that anticipation,
Yeah.
years of work building up to one moment.
Exactly. And then you get these incredible stories like Baron Sorrell for the Packers, day 3, just staying there in the green room.
Yeah, wanting to soak it all in.
Right. And then that connection with the fans when his name finally got called, that's like peak draft stuff, real magic.
It is. But it also throws the more confusing moments into sharp relief,
But
doesn't
it
it?
really does.
Oh.
Which, well, that leads us right into what we're diving into today. Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah. The big slide.
The 5th-round fall. I mean, a lot of people had him pegged way higher.
Definitely.
So we're going to dig into why that might have happened. We've got some interesting stuff here, mainly from a YouTube discussion featuring Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, Stephen A. always has takes.
He does. It's from the Enjing Lenten channel. And our mission really is just to unpack it, all the reasons behind the fall, the commentary around it.
Makes sense. So, where do we start? What did Shedeur himself say? That seems like the logical place.
Yeah, good point. Well, in his post-draft call with reporters, he actually sounded pretty grounded.
Oh, really? After falling to the fifth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He talked about needing to improve, always getting better, and he even kind of hinted that maybe he'd handle things differently in the pre-draft stuff if he had another go.
Interesting. So, some self-reflection there.
It seemed like it, and what really came through was this sense of, like, humility and just being grateful for the shot, despite falling, you know?
That's actually pretty impressive maturity for a young guy in that spot, navigating that whole pre-draft circus.
Totally. And Stephen A. Smith, he definitely weighed in on that whole pre-draft period, too.
I bet he did.
He acknowledged, look, Shedeur probably wasn't perfect through it all, referenced some of the chatter, things written and said about his attitude, maybe some bravado.
Right, the narrative that was out there.
And he also agreed, yeah, Deion Sanders, his dad, probably didn't handle everything perfectly either. Nobody does.
Which ties into what Louis Riddick apparently brought up, that the draft itself is just, it's messy, it's human, it's not some perfect algorithm.
Exactly. But then Stephen A. really went to bat for Deion. Big time.
Okay, how so?
Well, he pointed out Deion's deep roots in the league. I mean, former analyst for CBS, NFL Network. He knows people.
Right, you have those connections.
And more than that, Stephen A. emphasized Deion's genuine passion for helping kids, being a role model. Plus, you can't argue with the talent, the winning.
At Jackson State, then Colorado.
Yeah, the record speaks for itself. And crucially, Stephen A. stressed Deion didn't have off-field issues as a player. No locker room cancer rep.
That's a key distinction he's drawing.
For sure. He mentioned coaches, former teammates praising Deion's leadership, his work ethic, how he supported guys.
So painting a picture very different from maybe the flashy primetime persona.
Exactly. He even contrasted him with guys like T.O. and Warren Sapp. Pointed out Deion's still right there on the sideline at Colorado, coaching, mentoring, opening doors.
Okay, so Stephen A.'s argument is basically Deion's overwhelmingly respected and positive within the football world.
Pretty much. And his main point was, whatever small bumps there might have been with Deion in the lead-up, it wasn't nearly enough to justify tanking his son's draft stock.
Especially a quarterback.
Right. He said Shedeur performed well, arguably the second best QB in the draft. You don't just let a guy like that slide to the 5th round over some perceived slight against his dad. That's the implication.
So he feels external factors, maybe personal feelings about Deion, played too big a role.
That's exactly it. Stephen A. listed Shedeur's positives. Focused on ball, no trouble, puts in the work. He even mentioned the watch gesture is just, part of his thing.
To primetime flash, bleeding through a bit.
Maybe. But then Stephen A. got really strong. He said some owners, some execs, should be ashamed if they deliberately targeted Deion by letting Shedeur fall. Strong words.
Wow. Yeah, that's direct. And it brings us back to that whole pre-draft thing being like a job interview, right?
Exactly, that came up too. The idea that you have to be aware of your audience.
The people holding the draft card.
Yeah, the GMs, coaches, owners. It's this tricky balance, isn't it? Be authentic, be yourself, but also understand how you're coming across to the people who control your career, your money.
And maybe Shedeur's comments about potentially doing things differently.
Yep.
Perhaps that's what he was reflecting on, those interactions.
Could be. It's all about perception versus reality, which actually ties into the points made defending Deion's character beyond just the primetime stuff.
Right, getting past the persona.
Yeah, Louis Riddick apparently shared some personal stories, things that show a different side.
Like what?
Like Dayon genuinely caring about his players, asking about their lives off the field, supporting a rookie, like signed off the street, making his first start, reminding guys that football isn't everything.
So, the opposite of the superficial image, the
Yes.
glasses, the chains, the highlights. More about the teammate, the mentor.
Exactly. The message was basically, hey, don't judge the guy based on the flash if you haven't actually known him or played with him.
A fair point. Public image versus private reality.
Definitely. Okay, but then the conversation took a really sharp, kind of ugly turn.
Ah, the prank call.
Yeah, that whole incident, just
Hmm.
wow.
Tell us what happened there.
So during day 2 of the draft, while Shedeur is presumably waiting, hoping, he gets this call on his stream.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Someone telling him he'd been drafted falsely.
That is brutal. Who would do that?
Turns out it was Jackson Ulrich. He's the son of Jeff Ulrich, the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator.
Oh, wow. The DC's son.
Yep. He apparently admitted it, even put up an apology on Instagram later. The league's looking into how he even got Shedeur's private number.
That's a whole other issue. How did the Falcons handle it?
They put out a statement, condemned it, apologized to the Sanders family, said they made sure Jackson apologized directly to.
Well, that's something. But the reactions to the prank itself must have been intense.
Intense is putting it mildly. Classless was thrown around a lot. Stephen A. was absolutely furious.
I can imagine.
Called it unethical, maybe even immoral to a degree. He basically said he hoped the kid felt embarrassed, hoped his dad disciplined him. He was worried it could even jeopardize Jeff Ulrich's job.
That's a serious potential consequence for the father.
For sure. Stephen A. really ripped into what he called that privileged little brat mentality. Just zero sensitivity to what Shedeur was going through or the potential blowback on his own dad.
And Jeff Ulrich, a guy with a whole career, suddenly known nationally for this?
Exactly. And they made a point to correct this wasn't some little kid. Jackson Ulrich is 21.
A grown adult.
Grown man, accessing, reportedly, his dad's private info to deliberately humiliate someone during a huge, likely very emotional moment. That's bad.
Way beyond just a prank.
Way beyond. The feeling was he should be absolutely ashamed and excoriated. Even with the Falcons trying to smooth it over, nobody was excusing Jackson's actions.
Understand.
Stephen A. even said he wanted to see the kid's face, so people would know who did this to the Sanders family, and frankly to his own father's reputation.
Whew. So beyond the immediate anger, did they talk about, like, the broader picture? What this says about anything?
Yeah, Louis Riddick offered that perspective. He framed it as a real lack of respect.
Respect for what, specifically?
For the player's journey, for the insane amount of work it takes to even get to draft day, for the families, the support systems, everything that goes into it.
He's right. It's easy to forget the human side sometimes.
He talked about draft day being the culmination of a lifelong dream for these guys, the sacrifices they've made, their families have made, the pressure not to let people down.
And Shedeur would have been feeling all of that even before the prank call hit, even though he did eventually get drafted.
Right, and Riddick pointed out the irony. Jeff Ulrich himself is a former NFL player, now a coach. He knows the sacrifices.
Which makes his son's actions even more baffling, disrespectful.
Both. Riddick saw it as disrespecting everything his own father had achieved and worked for. His conclusion was pretty sobering.
What's that?
That this kind of thing suggests we're becoming sort of desensitized. We see pro sports, we see the players, but maybe we forget they're human beings who pour everything into this.
Why?
He even brought up his own draft experience getting picked late 9th round, which doesn't even exist now, and just feeling that gut-wrenching doubt about whether you're good enough.
It really puts that prank call into a different, much harsher light. It wasn't just mean. It trampled on something deeply personal.
Exactly. So wrapping this all up, quite a deep dive, huh?
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there.
We saw these really different takes on why Shedeur Sanders fell in the draft, then that strong defensive Deion challenging the public image.
And then the whole prank call debacle, which just felt awful, and raised bigger questions about respect in the sport.
Yeah, it really highlights, I think, how complex things are. Talent, perception, family ties, personal conduct. It all gets tangled up in the NFL draft pressure cooker.
It really does.
Leaves you thinking, doesn't it? About the immense pressure these young athletes and their families are under. Constantly in the spotlight.
And how outside perceptions, often based on so little, can just clash completely with who someone actually is.
Yeah. What does an incident like this really tell us about where sports, personal behavior, and, public opinion all collide? Something to chew on.